Hello and welcome to the Soup Doctor. Today we're going to demonstrate a formula for beef barley, a classic winter soup. Now, just as there's a proper formula for excellent soup, there's a formula for health. And chiropractors have been espousing a formula for health since 1895, which is eating right, exercising, getting your rest, managing stress, and taking care of your spine and nervous system. And just like a recipe for health or a formula for health, there is a formula for a proper soup. And that always starts with a mirepoix, which is onions, celery, and carrots. And you can go to episode 1, the basics, and we'll go into detail on how to prepare a mirepoix. But also we have portobello and button mushrooms, we have bottom round beef, we have parsley, we have scallion, and we have, of course, barley. So today we're going to start with sweating the mirepoix. It always starts with the onions first in a cold pan with olive oil, and we slowly start to saute. We add salt to bring out the flavors, and we add pepper, lots of pepper. Barley really likes pepper. And we're going to add some red pepper flake as well. Red pepper flake adds a little bit of pepperiness in a different dimension than you'd get from black pepper. And what you're going to do is let that come to a sizzle, a slow sizzle, so to speak. So the onions are sweating away. And when I say sweating is, the heat is causing the cell walls to burst, and they're releasing the onion juice, so to speak, and it's hitting the bottom of the pan. And it's converting from starch into sugar. And that adds a unique richness to the soup. So it's important to start with sweating the onions before we go with the celery and the carrot. So after about 2-3 more minutes, once they're really translucent, we're going to add the next part of the mirepoix. Now the next ingredient we're going to concern ourselves about is the mushrooms. And here we have portobello. We also have some button mushrooms mixed in there. And so while the mirepoix is sweating, we're going to then prepare the mushrooms. And when you're preparing soup at home, it's not necessary to prepare everything and get it ready before you start cooking. So if you're fast enough in preparation, and that's what we go over in the basics, episode 1, is after you prepare the onions, they're sweating, you're cutting the celery. As the celery's sweating, you're cutting the carrots. As the carrots are sweating, you're cutting the mushrooms so that you can speed up the process. And the key is, if you can prepare healthy foods quickly, you're more inclined to do it. So if you're taking 2 hours to prepare something, it's a lot easier to go through the drive-thru, unfortunately, and get something very unhealthy. So keep that in mind as you're preparing the soup. So let me show you a little trick on how to prepare these mushrooms. Here's a little tip I learned from my brother-in-law, and it's a way to give the mushrooms a little dimension in their shape. You cut, you spin, you cut, you spin, you cut, you spin, you cut, you spin, you cut, you spin. And it gives you a little bit more dimension. So you cut, spin, 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 spin. Cut, spin, 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 spin. Cut, spin, spin, spin. And there you go. So now that the mirepoix is finished sweating, we're going to then sweat the mushrooms. So let's go do that now. Okay, the mushrooms are completely sweated, and it's time to add the parsley, the scallion, and the stock. What we have here is beef stock and chicken stock. Now, in the basics episodes, we demonstrated how to make a healthy stock from scratch. But if you're pressed for time, a good store-bought stock can be had. It must be antibiotic-free, free-range chicken or beef, and no MSG. Now, I add a little bit of beef stock, mostly chicken stock, simply because I think beef can overpower a soup. So let's add these ingredients and finish up the soup. Okay, now the stock is getting ready to simmer. It's got all the ingredients and it's developing its own flavor. The next step is preparing the beef. Now, this is a bottom round roast. Bottom round roast is very low in saturated fat, and it's one of the best cuts of meat for soups. It's very tough, it's very dry. It doesn't prepare well unless you put it in a soup and you simmer it for a long time. What I've done is cut it in very small, bite-sized pieces, excellent for soup. I've seasoned it with paprika, some chili powder, salt and pepper. I've tossed it with some olive oil. What we're going to do here is sear it all before we put it into the soup. Because if we just put this right into the soup, it wouldn't add any flavor. It would be very tough, and we need to sear it first to increase flavor, caramelization, and tenderize it a bit as well. Now, this is a critical step. You don't want to touch the meat right now. It's developing excellent caramelization. And if you start stirring it around too much, you're going to start dissipating the heat. So don't touch it until it's almost all the way cooked, and you're going to have very good depth of color and flavor. So just leave this alone for a little bit, and it's almost ready. So now you can see it's been cooking, and most of the color the pink has disappeared. So now it's time to stir it a little bit, and we can see the depth of caramelization that's occurring, and that adds tremendous flavor to the dish there. Now it's ready to go in. Now let's let's go even further with the flavor. Notice the caramelization in the pan. That's excellent flavor right there. So we want to dissolve that and put it in the soup. And what we're going to do is add some red wine and extract every bit of flavor we can for this soup. Give that just that little extra. Now we've dissolved all those solids, we're ready to add them to the soup. Okay, so the meat's been added to the stock. It's been simmering away for about 20-30 minutes now, and that's been developing a lot of good flavor. Now the thing about barley is it doesn't add much flavor. It adds texture and body, but it absorbs flavor. So you want to let the flavor develop first and add the barley at the end. It takes another 30 minutes or so to cook, and then the soup is ready. We're also going to add some herbs de Provence at this point, and that's going to add some perfume to the overall tone of the dish and add a little bit of nuance. Now, it's important to rinse the barley thoroughly before we add it to the stock, so let's do that now. So for a finishing touch, we're going to add a bit of herbs de Provence, the dried herb that's going to add a lot of nice flavor to the dish. So the soup is done. All you have to do now is taste it. You have to see if it's got enough salt, enough pepper. If it's a little bland, you might need some Tabasco sauce, maybe a little malt vinegar to bring up the acid. But you taste it, adjust it, and it's ready to serve.